is to congratulate the Right Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga for running this race. As many of my colleagues have said, it was not about Raila Odinga, it was about Kenya. And I think, Mr. Speaker, sir, as we left Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and I'm happy by the comments of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga when he says he's coming back more energized and more focused going into the future, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the 22 nations from African Union who stood for the 7 rounds, Mr. Speaker, for Raila Odinga. In 2 rounds he emerged, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it is not easy to go 7 rounds. We know people who go 1 minute and 59 seconds, Mr. Speaker. But for at this age, Baba Raila Odinga could manage to go for 7 rounds in African Union, Mr. Speaker. So we celebrate and appreciate what he did. 7 rounds at his age is not easy in African Union contest, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and therefore, as a country, every cloud has a silver lining, Mr. And I don't know why Senator Amida is excited about the rounds. I don't know, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to digress. Mr. Speaker, and therefore, I want to assure the nation, and even, Mr. Speaker, thank President William Ruto for magnanimity. You remember in 2022, the presidential election was close call. But out of magnanimity of President William Ruto, when Raila Odinga declared that he will run for African Union, President William Ruto did not look at Raila as the opponent that he defeated in general election. He looked him as a brother, as a statesman, as a Kenyan. And that is why Raila Amolo Odinga had at his disposal the entire government machinery to campaign across 51 states of Africa, Mr. Speaker, and share his vision for a better Africa, Mr. Speaker. I was disappointed that some people in parts of this country, others in social media, could celebrate the loss of Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga never lost anything. It is Kenya who lost, because it is the standing in the League of Nations, Mr. Speaker. Let us not confuse. If it is about losing, Raila has developed a thick skin of losing many elections, Mr. Speaker. But he has always looked at the brighter. He has been the safe pair of hands when Kenya is in turmoil. From 2007, Mr. Speaker, in 2018, and the other day in 2022, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say what the people who celebrated on social media and some parts of this country, we tell them, riswa na washindwe katika jina la Yesu, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, number 2, it is not the first time, Mr. Speaker, that Raila Odinga as a Kenyan has lost. Even Nancy Kirigitu lost. Even Rachel Mamo lost. Even the latest Amina Mohammed lost in 2017. We never saw this kind of vitriol and hatred, Mr. Speaker, against a candidate like Raila Odinga, Mr. Speaker. I want to tell the nation, many people thought when Raila lost in AU, some people could be used to fight government, or unto them. It will not happen, Mr. Speaker. Because as a country, we have more better agenda to have a prosperous nation going into the future in governance, in development, and in rule of law and democracy, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to applaud. Many have been arguing that the position of Kenya in DRC crisis, the position of Kenya in issues of Gaza and Israel, the position of Kenya in Sudan crisis, where we saw rapid response here in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, and many other positions of Kenya across the world. But, Mr. Speaker, we must accept that beyond and above African Union engagement, there was the issue of religion, language, and region, and also superpowers. And I'm happy my brother from Homa Bay has said, Kenya should not look east or west. We should look where our interests are as a country, Mr. Speaker. Because we cannot depend. You saw the other day when Donald Trump came, he came with a different policy. China or the East have come with a different policy, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it is neither here nor there that we are arguing today that it is based on many forces. But we know after African Union, as a continent, there are many international and global interests, whether they come from East or West, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, for Raila Odinga as our candidate, as a statesman, as a Kenyan, Mr. Speaker, to stand on the annals of history and look for this seat, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate him. It is not easy. Even in local elections, like ward elections, we have seen people who say, we will run, we will run. But when the real game is called, they are nowhere to run even for a ward election, Mr. Speaker. And that will happen in 2027, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, what is the future? As we congratulate His Excellency Mohammed Ali Yusuf of Djibouti, although I saw his speech and I was disappointed that we had more money and more power, Mr. Speaker, I thought he would have been more magnanimous. You know, in victory, under 48 laws of power, in Robert Greene, you should know when to stop celebrating. It is one of the basic tenets of 48 laws of power in Robert Greene, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and therefore it is very unfortunate to come from him when he wants to unite the country. He will be the biggest envoy. Senator Wanyonga will tell you, His Excellency Ali Mausuf Mohammed will be the biggest envoy of Africa. And therefore he should give a message of hope, of unity across the African continent, Mr. Speaker. We expect him to handle the DRC crisis, the Sudan crisis, Mr. Speaker, and many other crises that we face as a world, as a global nation, Mr. Speaker. The future of Africa, we need to agree. We need to ensure we trade more in the trade within Africa region. Why would I need a visa to travel to Ghana or even to South Africa, Mr. Speaker? And we are Africans. We should promote a visa-free Africa, where one African even work. There are many students from Masai Mara University. I wish to see them working in South Africa as experts or as civil servants in South Africa, in Namibia, in Ghana, in Tunisia, Mr. Speaker, in Djibouti, among other countries, Mr. Speaker. Number two, we must encourage open-air skies. It is unfortunate sometimes when we are flying to West Africa, you must fly to France so that you can fly back. It is more nearer to fly to London than to fly to some of the West Africa, Mr. Speaker. We must agree that we must promote open skies and aviation, Mr. Speaker, so that we can go into the future, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, as I talk, the reforms in Kenya Airways is long overdue, Mr. Speaker. We must, Mr. Speaker, we must ensure that we encourage Kenya Airways, which was now pride of Africa, is disappointing, Mr. Speaker. I saw even the Nigerian embassy, Nigerian civil aviation